Hello and welcome. This is the Unknown Light Warrior, the founder of the modern incarnation of the 144K mass meditation group. We do mass meditations that are more like psychic surgery that actually anyone can do and participate in, even if you don't consider yourself an energy worker of any kind, because the guidance is that good. And our website is the numbers 144, the letter K, armyoflight.org, and just check that website out. It either resonates or it doesn't. And we offer a free course titled The 6 Critical Elements to a Successful Starseed Group. Starseed, what men refer to as light worker. And with that introduction out of the way, let's get into this because it's getting a little viral. And the first thing to realize about it is it's creating much more fear than inspiration and hope in the grounded sense. So this video, it was I suppose initially promoted by the YouTube channel Inspired, and I can recommend that YouTube channel. The guy, John Nolan, of the Inspired YouTube channel. He's fine. He's okay. And with regards to Frank Jacob, you know, the first thing that raised suspicions for me, 333. The first things that raised suspicions for me about this whole thing, about what is claimed in this video over here, which I'll show you in a moment. He has it on locals, but someone uploaded it onto BitChute as well. And I'll be getting into that play by play and commenting it, because that seems to be the way people prefer to receive information. Anyway, Jean Nolan and the Inspired YouTube channel, he's sort of no problem. He's a wonderful guy and a great channel. Frank Jacob, never heard of him. And what raised my suspicions initially was he started talking about information that was very, very old, that did the circles back in 2008, 2009, and including 2012. And he didn't even state Bill Brock Brader's real name, which is Bill Wood, that guy that was interviewed in 2012 by Kerry Cassidy, that gave a lot more clarity on what was even then, in 2012, old information, which was Looking Glass. So that, yeah, it's stuff that everyone's known for quite a long time, unless you're very recently awakened, then you may not know about it. That didn't feel right. It didn't land right. Okay. So I'll leave that at that. Jean Nolan, he's okay. He's a great guy. And when it comes to the area of discernment, I'm not going to criticize him on that, because that's an area that we can all, most of us, need to improve on. It's always a tricky situation with discernment. But long story short, the whole Guardians of the Looking Glass, it is let's just say it's looking like a CIA psychological operation, otherwise known as Psy-Op. I tested this with the teams. Okay, most of us have our own non-physical beings that we work with. I tested it just to make sure that what I was getting intuitively or psychically was accurate. And I don't do muscle testing nor testing with a pendulum. I do something else that in my experience has been more reliable. And the teams that 144K meditators are quite familiar with, they said, yes, it is a black hat operation, not a white hat operation. The places to go to for fairly reliable sources of intel from the Earth Alliance, aka white hats, is people such as Simon Parkes. He's got a YouTube channel, although his surname ends with an ES. Simon Parkes of Connecting Consciousness. I think that's the name of his YouTube channel. I'm not sure. Quite a wonderful English gentleman. Michael Jaco and Q the Storm Rider. Telegram channel, Q the Storm Rider. That's where you'll find, fairly reliable intel from the Earth Alliance or White Hats. Now this group here, these Guardians of the Looking Glass, they've popped up out of nowhere, and I'm going to get into their video now, since I've set the stage enough. And it's centered around a false flag attack on April the 18th, and I'll be getting into that as well. So let's just begin, and we'll do a play-by-play sort of commentary, as that's what works for most people. And of course, some of you have probably not gotten around to listening to this video to begin with. So let's get started.
We are the Guardians of the Looking Glass. We are a group of former intelligence officers and military officials who have come together to release classified information about future events to come. Our knowledge comes from our work on the Looking Glass artifact, first discovered in Iraq, along with other discoveries in the 1990s.
Okay, so another thing that doesn't make it look reliable, let's just say that much, is the Looking Glass. It's been around for many decades, since around about the 60s or 70s at the very least. It's a reverse engineered technology that was being operated in an underground base, and they've pretty much all been cleared now, with the exception of tunnels, certain tunnels closer to the surface. And it wasn't an artifact that was being used, especially since the mid-1990s. Operation Looking Glass was operational before the 1990s, and it wasn't an artifact. It was an artificial system or structure that David Wilcock famously brought to light and explained in his initial blockbuster video 2012 Enigma that went viral back in 2007, 2008. It may still be up on YouTube. You can look that one up. So there's a bit of some disjointed information there that doesn't sit right, doesn't line up, I guess.
During this time, the artifact was activated by the US military and connected to computers. We were able to see dozens of future timelines and the convergence or singularities that led to two possible outcomes by the year 2030. In one outcome, humanity awakens and the current order is dismantled. An event then occurs, and instead of this event being negative, it is a positive one.
Okay, so the point of singularity that produces one of two outcomes was actually by December 21st, 2012, not 2030. I can't go into the sources off the top of my head, but Bill Wood, as Mr. Nolan put it, Bill Brockbrader, in other words, he explained during the interview with Kerry Cassidy back in 2012 that uh, the two main timelines merging into a point of singularity occurred at the end of 2012. Okay, in particular, December 21st, 2012, not 2030. Now, there are other timelines. There's sort of like, how do I explain it? There's sort of sub-timelines. There's a primary timeline, then there's sub-timelines within that primary timeline. And that positive primary timeline was achieved at the end of 2012. So that's not quite correct. Two possible outcomes by the year 2030 is not the case. It's 2012.
In the other outcome, the current structure remains in place, a nuclear war takes place, along with many horrible events. Then the event occurs, and instead of being a positive event, it is a negative one.
So that was very much on the cards by the end of 2012. After the end of 2012, that one was removed, but even with the positive timeline, there was still some chaos. There were still lower timelines within the primary positive timelines that was achieved at the end of 2012.
You may wonder how one event can either be positive or negative. You will learn, and it will make perfect sense to you once it is explained. This event is a cosmic event, something that happens in our solar system. Without the intervention by the current power structure, this event would be incredibly positive. But due to the vaccines and a secondary plan being developed, the event will instead be turned into a nightmare. We will explain more in a secondary video, which is being released soon, titled 2030 and the event, if you want to learn more about it. Now, let's move on to the current timelines we are facing and how we must act to change these outcomes. Based on what we learned from the Looking Glass artifact, we concluded that we must release these videos at this time so that the horrifying events that are about to unfold can be changed. Each week, we will release a new video. Each week, you will learn of new specific timeline changes so that you.
Okay, so again, without seeing and hearing empirical physical proof, I'll just say that that's very suspicious. The White Hats or Earth Alliance, they already have their public intel release outlets, if you can call it that, such as Q the Storm Rider, Simon Parkes, Michael Jaco. There's some others that don't come to mind right now. InfoWars to a degree. And so let's just say theoretically they don't need this video channel or these Guardians of the Looking Glass to come out of nowhere like that. There's no legitimate need for it, which doesn't help its credibility. Okay, let's move on.
You can work to change the future outcome. We have been waiting many years to finally release this information. Our video releases are specifically timed based on what the Looking Glass artifact revealed about how to change future events. What we were able to see was that our videos must be released now. Not in the past, not in the future, but on these specific dates, starting in March 2022. We were also able to see that the events can only be changed by the actions of those watching these videos. If these videos are spread and shared by thousands of people, the events can be changed. If the videos are not spread and shared, then the events cannot be changed, and the most negative timeline is then solidified and set in stone.
Okay, so again, more suspicion. They're putting heavy emphasis on you got to make sure you spread these videos and basically do as we say. Again, not sitting right because there was already and has already been for years now fairly reliable white hat intel outlets for the public. Q, the original Q, being the obvious one, and Q the Storm Rider on Telegram being the more modern um, iteration of Q. It's it's pretty much Q. Q the Stormbringer is pretty much Q. Very little difference in the nature of the posts and the intel being provided there. And yeah, they seem pretty kind of aggressive in trying to get everyone to spread these videos, spread this channel, get everyone following this, and saying do this or else the negative timeline will be solidified. Which in one way is true in terms of principle, because yes, if we don't take actions, typically in the form of effective mass meditations, then yes, it does bring more likelihood for a negative timelines, but not to this degree. Because of where we've reached. And notice how it's all come out in March. So it's starting in March 2022. Very suspicious with that late date.
The Looking Glass artifact showed this to us, that it is dependent on the actions of others to change the outcomes. Your work and help to spread this message then becomes vital. It will be up to you what happens. For our first video, we will start with one future date.
Okay, so it may be trying to position itself, well, probably is trying to position itself as a replacement for other leading Intel source and position itself as the go-to leading Intel source. They're clearly going for that.
Future videos we will post will deal with new dates and new events. What follows is the most recent, most important event we must act to change. The date of the first event is April 18, 2022. On this date, a false flag attack will occur in New York City. A bomb will be set off, killing 2,000 Americans instantly and injuring thousands. The bomb will be housed in a large van and set off on or near Times Square during a busy time. This bomb has been planted by interests aligned with the West and their agenda. The media will blame Russia, so will President Biden. They will present some false evidence that points to Russia being the culprit, and much of the world will be convinced. The condemnations will be swift, and then there will be military action. Biden will order an all-out attack of every Russian outpost and asset outside of her borders. This will include all assets in Ukraine and any Russian military naval vessel not at port. Russia's
Okay, so I'll quickly mention at this point, the cabal is always attempting false flags as much as it can, whenever it can. And I'm sure it will attempt this false flag on April the 18th in New York. Now, we'll be doing a mass meditation on the 16th, I believe, because of a certain astrological event at that time, which will, as we have done in the past, since 2017, when the 144K was established, in this modern times anyway, we'll reset the timelines yet again. We've got a proven track record with strong empirical indicators of that since 2017, and we'll continue to do so. Now, part of the reason why they're going to attempt this false flag on April the 18th is not just to set off a false flag and therefore a negative timeline, but also to prove this particular new Intel source that's popped out of nowhere, to prove its credibility. Okay, so that everyone will say, oh my God, they were right. These guys are the real deal. Okay, to establish their credibility and trust. So it's like we're doing the false flag on April the 18th for that reason as well. Even if it's not as bad as it turns out to be. And from now on, it just goes on about a timeline that probably was seen at some point way back when the cabal was using Operation Looking Glass. But in recent years, all they've had, because seemingly all the DUMs, plus or minus certain negative military installations that are subterranean for the most part. As far as DUMs are concerned, they're pretty much all gone. But the point is, the Cabal has lost use of Looking Glass because it basically became redundant after the end of 2012. Because as Bill Brock-Brader, aka Bill Wood, said back in 2012, that I mentioned before, in his interview with Kerry Cassidy, past end of 2012, they can't see anything. It's just a blinding flash of light, which always had them in a blind panic, to put them in Bill Brock-Brader's own words. So prior to 2012, when the Cabal did have Operation Looking Glass, they may have seen this kind of scenario, this particular kind of timeline at some point. And that's probably what they're repeating. And but like I said, in recent years, all that the Cabal have had in terms of looking into the future was an AI that would calculate the most likely outcomes out of whatever event or situation. They've had that, which could look as far and predict as far ahead as 6 months ahead. But what the White Hats have sees 3 years ahead. I'm pretty sure that was from Q as well, or Q the Storm Rider, I believe, if I remember that correctly. Um, so that's part of the reason why some of this will look and feel true, is because I probably did see such a timeline prior to 2012, when the Cabal had and was utilizing Operation Looking Glass. Okay.
Russia's response is restrained. Russia attacks some U.S. assets in Europe, but avoids many casualties. Russia manages to only kill a few U.S. military service people, while the United States has just killed thousands of Russian military service people. This leads to conflicting narratives. Some say Russia looks weak and defeated, while others rush to Russia's side, including India and China. By this time, many begin to doubt Russia was behind a truck bombing attack. Many also see the US's response as too hasty and too severe, seeing that the first false flag was a general failure and the narrative is turning against them. The West prepares a second false flag. This plan involves the release of anthrax all over Washington, D.C. The plan will use strain 836 of anthrax, the most potent and deadly ever created. It is a strain created by Russia in the past and later destroyed by Russia. However, unbeknownst to the Russians, the strain was smuggled out of Russia by Western assets many years ago and developed in U.S. biolaboratories. Once it is confirmed that it is strain 836, all blame will land at Russia's feet. It is a well-known creation of Russia. Many will believe Russia must be behind it. The attack will kill over 100,000 people within a few days and spread to outlying areas. The attack is so severe that it begins to spread to many large eastern cities, and within 1 week millions are dead and millions more severely ill.
Again, the Cabal, with all its vast network, especially the the CIA is very much the workhorse of the Cabal, a very central operating system of the Cabal. Yeah, they're going to try this, and this is actually one of those disclosures that they have to announce prior to attempting this. Of course, they'll be doing black magic rituals prior to attempting both this false flag attack and the false flag attack on April the 18th that they'll attempt. Just to clarify, it's all Cabal. It's always all Cabal. It's not Russia and not, well, US in terms of patriots, and so forth. It's always Cabal, administered, managed, and carried out by the CIA typically, just to make sure we're all on the same page with that. But they try stuff like this all the time. Okay, it doesn't mean we should be complacent. It's important that we get involved with effective mass meditations, to raise the timelines so that this sort of stuff just doesn't happen. And again, 144K members who are watching this, you know this to be the case. You've experienced timeline upgrades where things just don't happen that were predicted or were meant to happen. Instead, good things happen, literally.
The military-grade anthrax is so potent, its spread cannot be contained. Much of the eastern U.S. is closed off, based on wind patterns, mostly impacting New England. The Biden administration is moved out of D.C. before the attack, as they had knowledge of it. They are moved to Denver. Here, the United States blames Russia for the attack and a nuclear.
Okay, so that's kind of funny. They had knowledge of it. Translation, they're the ones that did it. Hence, they had knowledge of it. If they had knowledge of it, they would have stopped it. Okay? Um, and God knows, I mean, even though it's a fake presidency, you know, let's just say a normal US presidential administration would have access to the insanely vast um, surveillance network and apparatus of the NSA, among others. And, you can't get away with a sneeze. If you sneeze, they'll know about it. That's how profound just the NSA resources are, um, with all their AI based surveillance. It's just crazy. So, yeah, they knew about it, meaning they're the ones behind it. And if they weren't behind it, they could have easily stopped it. Let's not insult each other's intelligence here.
War starts off. The US launches an all-out nuclear attack at Russia, at every Russian city and asset. But only 30% of the nukes reach Russia or impact. Russia's air defenses are more robust than previously suspected. Russia's response is not forgiving this time, but rather ruthless and brutal. She responds within minutes by targeting all US military installations and nuclear sites, but also launches nukes at 20 large American cities and 18 make impact. 25 million Americans are vaporized instantly as Russia decides to use its more powerful nukes. Another 50 million suffer injuries, and another 70 million are at risk of mild radiation poisoning. Due to false science and misunderstandings about nuclear weapons, the fallout is not nearly as severe as many believed it would be. Both the US and Russia were aware of this for many years, but decided not to correct this false information, leading many to believe a nuclear war would lead to a nuclear winter. This turns out not to be the case, as the radiation is generally mild and dissipates quickly. However, the devastation caused by the blasts themselves is significantly more severe than the nukes used on Japan. The weapons are now so powerful that a radius up to 20 miles by 20 miles can be vaporized. America's defenses are not strong enough to stop all of the nukes. The US readies her most advanced flying machine, the TR-3B, but it is not able to track the missiles due to a technology Russia developed.
Okay, so this one even raised a bit of a laugh, the TR-3B. That's been around and widely known by the awake and aware portion of the surface population for 15 odd years now. Everyone knew about it by 2010 if you were awake back then. And it's actually an old, antiquated piece of crap of a anti-gravity vehicle. Um, anyway, that was funny. That was funny. I mean, if the CIA and negative military and DARPA, if they do have anti-gravity vehicles, it'll be something way more advanced than just the TR-3B. They're old, and obsolete compared to what Space Force have. Which is the various SSP, mostly Navy, US Navy based anti-gravity craft, fleets of them, that are sure as heck far more advanced than the TR-3B. And they can easily stop missiles from anywhere. Space Force can easily stop that. And I'm mainly referring to Trump's version of Space Force, where all the various Space Force uh, elements within the US Air Force, the US Navy, how they've all been brought under one moniker. Um, they can easily take care of any missile, um, and this is basically such a non-issue. But again, back in the late 2000s, something like this would have been what this robot voice is saying, um, would have been a lot more believable. If this was 2008 or 2010, I would more than likely believe this, and such a scenario would have been possible in the late 2000s, which suggests old information from Operation Looking Glass sessions, if I can call that, from past decades, where such a thing was on the cards. There was such a timeline, but it's been shut down. Such a timeline has been removed. And I almost forgot to mention the fact that it's a robot voice saying all of this. There's no person on camera like Michael Jaco, his former CIA, and has always openly said that and admitted that. But I can tell that in this, as it relates to him, he was always more the rank and file CIA agents that were out in the field actually doing the work, not that 30% or so in mostly positions of power within the CIA that are definitely quite dark and fundamentally psychopaths. Um, okay, so moving on.
The technology is a cloaking and holographic type, never before seen, and not something the US was ready for. The TR-3B can track the nukes and even fly alongside them, but targeting systems fail at every attempt to destroy them. The
All right, so he says the nukes, the missiles are cloaked, have a cloaking technology. And then immediately after that, he says the TRB-3s can follow and track them. All right, so obviously that isn't making sense.
pilots of the TR-3B become so desperate they attempt to fly into the nukes with the aircraft, but even these attempts fail.
Okay, so again, the TR-3B, back when they were actually being used, they would have weapons, laser weapons that should easily take care of any missile. Hypersonic missiles are still an issue, but even they're sort of redundant in terms of the technologies that the Space Force has, and the Space Force, which is under the control of the Earth Alliance or White Hats, that would never allow this sort of thing to happen anyway. Positive ET groups would never allow such a thing to happen as well. It's just too hard to believe. Now, I'm not implying for all of us to be complacent. We need to keep on doing what we do with mass meditations and continue to participate in them because they'll try. Okay.
Between the nuclear exchanges, Russia survives, and the United States is completely annihilated. Canada does not receive a nuclear strike, but instead receives countless conventional strikes, disabling her small military and devastating her infrastructure. All commerce ceases in both the U.S.
Okay. So the white hat or positive elements of the US military that have, at a minimum, the critical mass amount of control of the US military at large. I mean, the negative military is still at large, but it has less control by comparison. It's a smaller faction. Um, and anyway, the positive military within the US would never allow such a thing to eventuate under any circumstances. Either way, we're above or past this timeline. Anyway,
and Canada, and a total breakdown of society occurs. The world is shocked. Many criticize Russia for the brutality of the attack, but many also note that the United States attacked first. Many also doubt Russia was behind the truck bombing or the anthrax attack at this point, as the United States evidence and claims appeared rushed and dubious upon closer examination. Whatever the moral qualms the world feels, the world comes to recognize Russia as the victor in the battle. From this point, Russia threatens Europe and destroys some of her targets. Europe capitulates quickly and surrenders to avoid further damage. At this point, 17 days after the first nuclear weapon is fired, the war is over, and Russia and China are now the de facto world powers. Russia and China agree to help the United States.
Okay, so 17 days, and then the war is over. That's a poke, if you will, a little jab at Q, the letter Q. Just as an aside there, that's deliberate. Out of all the days that the war's over is 17 days. Yeah, sure thing.
And a ceasefire is agreed upon. A cleanup and rescue effort takes place. 1 week into the ceasefire, the last remaining American military officials plot to fire some of her last available cruise missiles and munitions at ships crossing the sea from China and Europe. The attack takes place, and most of the missiles are shot out of the sky by a ready and alert Russian and Chinese military, but two reach their targets, destroying two large ships and further preventing a rescue effort and souring sympathies toward the US. The US and Canada fall into total chaos. Millions cross into Mexico, creating a humanitarian crisis. Many of the cartels that control the northern part of Mexico start defending their land, and countless gun battles take place. Americans find Mexico cannot help or house them at all, and total bedlam and chaos consumes the northern hemisphere. The Mexican and Central American armies gather to create a defensive wall between Culiacan to Chihuahua to Monterrey to stop the oncoming hordes. Many South American countries rally to join, realizing millions of desperate Americans may reach South America eventually. The world's remaining powers continue to attempt humanitarian aid, but later conclude a military effort must take place, as the entire region has become lawless. Chinese and Russian troops then land on American soil, and a brutal campaign of order and enforcement begins. Both countries split the US up into regions they agree to jointly or fully control.
So Chinese and artificially engineering a complete collapse and chaos of American infrastructure and society. That was always part of the plan, um, and for war to take place between the proverbial Gog versus Magog, Gog being US, Canada, Western Europe, and Magog being primarily Russia and China. And in case you don't know, the computer chips that were that ran all US military hardware, craft of all sorts, computer systems, IT infrastructure, all those computer chips had backdoors that the Chinese and Russians had would have backdoor entrances into and shut down their ships, their aircraft, shut everything down easily. And such an incident actually took place in the Black Sea in I think it was 2014, where a whole aircraft carrier was just shut down by a Russian little anti-gravity drone. We would zip around, do all these non-Newtonian maneuvers, as David Wilcock described in another big presentation he made in, I think it was April 28th, 2015. So that was always part of the plan, where the US would lose the war, Chinese and Russian troops would come in and occupy, and the constitution would be destroyed. There would be chaos, bedlam, etc. So they tried.
Americans, armed to the teeth with guns, stage small resistances and skirmishes. This goes on for many years, leading up to 2030. During this time, a new plot is underway, a plot hashed by the elites in Europe, one the Russians and Chinese share no involvement in. The plot is to release a new pathogen to justify a new vaccine. The vaccine is designed to interact with the existing vaccines and graphene oxide, now coursing through the bodies of billions of people. It is also designed to be introduced to the second and third world through a new campaign that will dose the rest of the planet that did not get vaccinated. The graphene oxide is not designed to kill, but rather death is a side effect, in some. Its true purpose is to interact with the solar event, the event to occur in 2030. The graphene oxide will cause this event to be a horrifying one, rather than a positive one. If one is vaccinated at all, they will experience not only a physical, but also a multidimensional annihilation when the event takes place, to a point their souls, or extra-dimensional essences, will be severely damaged and vibrational frequencies reattuned so that they align with the most negative, dark energies existing within the realm of Earth. The positive outcome is one also revealed by the looking.
Okay, so regarding the vaccines, that's easy to believe because the cabal would do something like that. um, Again, if you are vaccinated, don't worry too much because it can be dealt with. Um, it, it it is healable, although it will take um, post-event, and by event I'm not talking about the solar flash. Post-event technology such as med beds, they can easily take care of it, so don't worry too much about it. Uh, and yeah, again, they'll try stuff like this. They'll try, but it's all being shut down.
Glass, one seen by each member of Guardians of the Looking Glass. We were shown that as humanity steps in to stop all of these horrific events, one by one, through the help of our work, that a future emerges leading up to 2030 whereby humanity ascends to a higher consciousness, one more loving, one more aware, one more understanding. Each individual begins to see the world as it is, rather than how it is filtered through the media, Hollywood, and government. An unveiling takes place. The vaccines are rejected. A cure is found for those poisoned by the graphene oxide, who.
So this is where, in copywriting and marketing and sales, you begin the what's called future pacing, where you build and help a person imagine their ideal scenario, their ideal result. Okay, a critical and fundamental technique and tactic used in sales, advertising, and marketing. And I have that background, so I know that for a fact.
Regret their decision. Each horrific event is stopped. Then, the event takes place in 2030, and the human body, free from the vaccine toxins, is transformed through a cosmic energy burst, one that invigorates every human with new life, vitality, and youthfulness, as well as higher dimensional abilities and powers. Each person reverts in age to about the appearance of being in their mid to late 20s. All disease is eliminated. The human body can live off of energy, light and water, and has no need for food, but food.
Okay, so yes, that's on the timeline that we're on now, and they'll attempt black magic followed by false flags to get us off that timeline, although it's getting harder and harder for them to do that, much less likely, because a positive timeline has been secured, and that was from Megan Rose's Pleiadian contact by the name of Val Neck. If you don't follow Megan Rose's YouTube channel, you'll want to do that. I'm pretty sure it's simply called Megan Rose. She's a 30-year-old blonde, straight hair young lady, American. Um, you'll want to check out her videos at the beginning of April at a minimum, where she gets direct intel from Valneg, and he said positive timeline secured. And she gets into a little bit of detail um, from Valnek that there's highly sophisticated quantum technology that extraterrestrial groups use to very closely monitor the timelines. And according to her, he said timeline secured. And that's of about 2 or 3 days ago, today being the 6th of April, 2022.
Food can still be consumed. A new renewal and connection with the earth occurs. Small community governments take hold, and large international power structures and monopolies die off. Humans
So all this about the burst in the solar flash in 2030. That's scheduled for 2025, not 2030. And prior to 2025, a lot of us who are ready, typically star seeds, aka light workers, who are very emotionally balanced, very well connected, relatively healed, will be and actively activating, not just healing at the soul level, like such as soul fragment retrieval kind of stuff, but actively activating our DNA, dormant genes at the physical level, that is, and so forth. Living off of light and not needing food, except perhaps air and water. Yeah, that may even happen prior to 2025 for some of us. And ET contact, physical galactic family reunion at the physical level, will also happen prior to 2025 for those of us who are ready. But that event, in terms of the solar flash, that'll alter genetics, among other things, and bring about these results that this robot voice, Mr. CIA man, is speaking of. And I mean, the Cabal have always known about this. That's one thing, meaning the solar flash. The event, another form of the event, they're sort of both going to happen, where the Cabal is finally removed from all positions of power, the Cabal network removed, arrested, placed in front of a firing squad, and shot accordingly. There's going to be lots of very busy firing squads across the world by the positive militaries. That's different, okay? Where they're all removed. You know, the QFS, quantum financial system, is now fully takes over. It's already sort of taking over, but fully takes over, and it's, you know, technology is released, media telling the truth, all that kind of thing. That's actually going to happen well prior to the actual solar event or the solar flash. And it has to, in order to prepare humanity for the solar flash. So just a bit of clarity there.
Can now live up to 1,000 years. New inventions come about that clean up the earth, such as bacteria that eat plastic. The old, corrupt governments are dismantled, the European elites lose all of their power, to the point that some end up in the streets as beggars.
Yeah, like that's going to happen well before the solar flash, all that stuff. After the solar flash, pretty much all of us, it seems, won't even need food because of the very quick genetic changes. Cabal, 1221. The Cabal members ending up as beggars on the streets. That won't happen because they're either going to be shot in front of a firing squad, literally, and that's already been happening, or they're going to be in jail, and that's for the ones that did plea deals, okay, and got lighter sentences and therefore avoided the firing squad. They're going to end up in jail for a certain number of years. And some are going to be taken up by the off-world groups because of what they did and how dark they were, and taken to the galactic central sun for their return to source. So there's basically pretty much not going to be any beggars on the street. So that isn't quite adding up as well.
There is no campaign of revenge at all. Humanity simply stops feeding the negative forces energy, and without that energy, they wither and fade away. They have no power, without the power fed to them by billions of people, and once billions decide to remove that power, they are left with nothing. This is how they are defeated, and this is how they end up, simply as beggars, or left alone with nothing. Many of them go mad at this point, as their wealth and power is stripped away. This is a glimpse of the
Which is already happening, by the way. They're losing their minds, their power is already being stripped away, their wealth is certainly being stripped away. Um, I just got to cue the Storm Rider post yesterday on the Telegram channel, saying that money that was being constantly always funneled from Ukraine to Delaware, the state of Delaware, that's come to a halt in recent days. It's already happening. We don't have to wait for months for that sort of thing to happen, or wait for the final removal and downfall of the cabal. More like the completion of it, because it's already happening. We don't have to wait for this to happen. It's already happening. So this intel source, I'm not going to say it doesn't know what it's talking about. It does know what it's talking about, because it certainly looks like and sounds like it's deliberately giving misinformation or disinformation, whatever the difference is.
Positive outcome, one we will share more of in upcoming videos. Now, to stop these events, we must first stop the attack on April 18th. If this event is not stopped, then the timeline cannot be reversed from the negative outcome.
So not for the first time, pretty much for the umpteenth time from a 144K's members' perspective. We'll be doing a mass meditation on April the 16th, shift the timelines, shut down their black magic rituals that they always do prior to a false flag, and which in turn assists the white hats, or literally raises the timelines to where the white hats discover it, assuming that they don't know about it already, and successfully stop it. Okay, and that's been the systematic approach of the 144K. We mean business.
If it can be stopped, additional videos will describe other events that must then be prevented over the course of the years 2022 to 2029.
Okay, so the whole 2029, from 2022 to 2029, it's not going to go on for that long, because it can't. The cabal systems, the fundamental underlying matrix structures are collapsing way too fast for anything to last as long as even 2023, never mind 2029. Ain't resonating, ain't adding up, ain't gelling. Sorry, dude, you're exposed.
The attack on April 18th is only the beginning of a series of horrific events that are to come, that one by one must be prevented. Over 70 events have been identified that must be changed, or the outcome will be that of the -1 in 2030.
Over 70 events that must be stopped. It's kind of daunting, hey? Puts you in a little bit of a panic, hey? And very dispiriting and disconcerting. Um, you know, yeah, it's not that they're not going to try at least another dozen times, another 70. I don't think they'll still be around as an organized criminal syndicate to be able to make that many attempts, another 70 attempts. Um, Granted, the CIA has agents everywhere, and I'm talking in the most seemingly obscure or the most mundane of industries and fields and professions. That is true, but again, it's a classic case of cutting off their funding, which they're in the process of completing, which is what Ukraine is all about, or partly all about. Um, yeah, they're not going to have the resources to make another 70 attempts. Another dozen, maybe.
30. In addition to this, around 50 or so special individuals were also identified as being necessary in helping change the outcome. These people will play a key role to stop the April 18th attack and all other future events that must be altered and changed. Some of them we have already contacted to let them know how important they are, and others will be led to us to contact us. Each will be given special instructions from us, actions they must take to bring about the positive timeline and outcome.
Oh, I'm sure they will be. um, so one uh, one thing that the CIA, with its exhaustive studies and examination in psychology, especially with starseeds, is that they know that one of our psychological weaknesses is validation and respect, or complete lack thereof, more to the point. And, recognition, any kind of esteem, respect, because of the way we were raised, courtesy of the matrix, courtesy of non-physical darkness in particular, and our internal wounding. We've been really, well, certainly 95% of us at a minimum have been really pummeled into smallness. Okay, being small, thinking small, acting small, and that actually, and therefore disconnected from our bigness, 555. And that actually has the opposite effect. It makes a person seek with a fair bit of zest and passion and enthusiasm, shall we say, I don't know, seeking bigness, like they need to feel and be important, and for the outside world to see that and validate that and give praise and that kind of thing. So that's deliberate, and to make us feel really special and important, which at one level is true, especially if you do participate in effective mass meditations. Of course, if you don't participate in effective mass meditations, or doing remote energy work, or doing grid work and such things, if you don't do that, then I can assure you, you're definitely not important, because you're not playing the role. If you play the role, yes, you are important, but not in the way that they mean it here. It's a different thing. It's again, utilizing that psychological damage of being treated as small by the matrix, and the lack of respect that comes with that.
The looking glass showed us we would come under severe attack from the European elites and their countless minions, and we must be prepared to defend those attacks. These attacks will range from our videos being removed, our credibility being questioned, and attempts to reveal our real identities that would lead to our murder. We need
Okay, so basically, they know what they're doing. Here, they're preempting the fact that it's being exposed by people such as myself, and therefore make people such as myself look like a cabal member or a European elite, and they're the only ones that would be attacking us and trying to discredit us. So that's why they're mentioning that here as a critical tactic. Again, CIA, just like their literal Nazi founders, really know psychology.
need everyone who wants to stop the negative outcome to help defend us as these attacks take place.
Okay, so to help defend us, we need, let me back up a little, because this is important. Because another thing they try to achieve here is dividing up the awake and aware community and have it fighting with itself. That's another one of the goals. Let me just bring it back a bit, because this is important. All right.
Being questioned and attempts to reveal our real identities that would lead to our murder. We need everyone who wants to stop the negative outcome to help defend us as the
To help defend us, anyone who wants to stop the negative outcome. Well, who wouldn't want to stop the negative outcome, right? Which is pretty much done here, or meaning exposed. So again, they're calling upon us to defend them against anyone attacking them, exposing them, to avoid the negative outcome. Who could disagree with that? So they're trying to turn light worker starseeds, awake and aware people, turn, manipulate us to defending them.
These attacks take place, otherwise we will not succeed. We are asking those of you who wish to join us to identify yourselves as guardians. You must then share each video, and
Identify yourselves as guardians. Again, that building up that esteem, you know.
millions must see them, or these events will not be changed, and the positive outcome of the event in 2030 will not happen. It bears repeating that even if the April 18th attack is stopped, there are as many as 70 additional events in the coming days, months and years that must also be stopped, each.
Okay, so again, that is to make us believe with a certain amount of emotion to keep on following us, because even if this false flag event turns out to not happen or possibly not be true, rest assured they're going to try again. Please listen to us.
And every one of them. We cannot succeed without your attention, dedication and help.
Well, that's true. Okay, and that's the end of that. So, okay, this has gone on for an hour. Now, this is for this week. This is in lieu of a Ground Crew Command Radio, which you can find on the blogtalkradio.com platform. We also have a YouTube channel, Ground Crew Command Radio, but we haven't posted there for a while for obvious reasons. We're going to start posting on Rumble mostly. So I hope that helped give badly needed clarity to this whole thing, so that both you and I can continue marching forward with confidence, with knowing, with certainty. Again, if you're not a 144K member, go to the numbers 144, the letter K, armyoflight.org, and opt in there to receive the weekly newsletter and notifications when the next broadcast of Ground Crew Command Radio is held, because this is just one small taste of the kind of analysis and empowering perspective and insight that you get on a regular basis when you listen to Ground Crew Command Radio or receive the emails. And 144K mass meditation have got quite a reputation for shifting timelines. We don't do 20 or 30-minute mass meditations. We do longer meditations that are more like psychic surgery, that are much more precise and effective in shifting the timelines, because certain things need certain clearing on the non-physical planes, and that naturally makes the timelines on the physical plane naturally rise, just to keep things, simple, short, and basic. So go ahead and join there. And this is the Unknown Light Warrior signing off for now.